What's your risk tolerance? What's your your duration of hold period? And
Yeah. Okay.
is
Okay.
this
Well, for me, I buy for 10 years.
okay?
Right.
Sure. Like if you're just
Renovations do not scare me at all. I actually prefer to renovate.
okay.
Right.
Well, right now in Calgary, speaking this time, so we're speaking early 2023 in January, uh, to the end of this year, and I forget exactly when it is. The city of Calgary extended their a program to Godfather or give you amnesty to get a legal suite built up to there's two standards. One's a lot less in terms of cost and really what you need. There's the building code and fire code. I always get them mixed up, but right now instead of going to the more stringent standard, they will godfather you and allow you to qualify at the lower standard, which will
Really?
save you a ton of money. So the big takeaways are if you don't have to put a secondary heat source in, which if you're drywall and running ductwork and put a second furnace in, that's already tens of thousands of dollars. That's
Wait. Your standard code is secondary furnace. So if you're doing a full to code duplex, you have to have two furnaces.
yeah, separate heat sources for each rental, fully self-contained, um, interconnected smoke alarms, proper size egress windows for a firefighter to enter the property with a Scotty air pack on their back. Um, there's a few other things too, and then parking requirements and so on and so forth. But
Sorry,
right
what are
now
your park? So okay, so for a permitted legal basement apartment suite, I need how much parking do I need?
in Calgary, typically it's I think it's I haven't looked at this in over 2 years, so it's I think it's two spots upstairs and then an additional spot downstairs.
Holy Hannah.
Yeah, three, and it has to be on the lot itself. Now I think that's relaxed a bit because that's when I first started. Because now they added into the fold last year as well. So here's another diamond in the rough. Semi-detached dwellings can now get their suites legalized
Nice, nice. And Hamilton, they just did away with all parking. You
as
don't
a
have to add
requirement.
any parking. Yeah.
Oh man, that's way better. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Well,
think
that's
it's
we have one win.
yeah. There you go. I think it's far less too, but yeah, that's kind of where it's at.
Two
Uh,
furnaces. Do you need two cooling sources?
well, AC is optional, right? I mean, no, so you don't need two cooling, but it has to have proper ventilation. So if you do baseboard heats, then
Mhm.
you need a was it HRV or air recovery ventilation unit or whatever it
You
is
gotta be
that
kidding
circulates the
me.
air.
Really?
Yeah. So if you're doing net new, this is what you have to include in
That's a lot of money to put in.
oh
For
yeah,
an
so that's why
ARV?
there's a great opportunity right now if you can buy the right property that has good bones. If it's got the right size of windows, if you've got the power panel in the common area that and the common access area instead of sitting in the bedroom in the basement suite,
Hmm.
ideally you can access the utility room without going in the basement suite. If you can find good layouts like that, man, and they have in the way they qualify, and I forget the exact cutoff date. I want to say it's like March 2017 or 2018, whatever the cutoff date. Again, you go to citycalgary.ca and find all the exact information.
Yes, folks,
Um,
we are not fire inspectors nor building code inspectors
no,
for
yeah,
Calgary.
caveats,
Please, please
disclaimers.
go to please go to Calgary,
Do you
calgary.ca,
know?
you said, to
Yeah,
find out the
that's right.
exact details.
Yeah, but we're trying to catch up to Edmonton. Edmonton's been ahead of us on the legal suite page or movement. They're a decade ahead of us, and in terms of their like bylaws, and they did blanketed secondary suites across the whole city, as
Mhm.
long as you just met these minimum requirements,
Right.
parking, heat sources, whatever, you can do
Mhm.
do it all, and it's awesome. So we're trying to get there too.
Mhm.
Um,
Sorry, Mackenzie, just to pause you there. I had a friend
yeah,
of mine who lives in Hamilton, invests in Edmonton. He actually mentioned to me it took him about 5 months to rent out his basement in Edmonton. So that's a massive win for. So actually, sorry to give context. I believe he rented for well under $1,000 for a brand new two-bedroom basement apartment just outside the city of Edmonton. My point being is, well, you're saying like it's Edmonton's done a great job with their basement apartment bylaws and zoning and enforcement and all sorts of things,
yeah,
which is wonderful for the tenants. Not so great for us landlords.
So let me give you context on that. And that's, I've talked about this, and this is going back to legislation and rent controls and all that stuff. So you go across Canada, it's by province, the legislation that
Mhm.
governs our industry. In Alberta, we're the most balanced jurisdiction. We don't have any rent controls in the sense that you can't raise rent
Mhm.
more than once every 365 days, but you can raise it to wherever you want. Now, I'll say that with a caveat. If you do a very predatory rent increase and you go into the RTDRS, which is our lower form tribunal for mediation, or you go to the courts, they'll throw that out. Like if you go call $1,000, just arbitrarily speaking, you double to 2,000 or 1,800, and you're well above market rates, they're gonna throw that out. But I mean, within reason, whatever current market rates are for your
So
product
throw it
type,
out as in they're gonna say you can't do that.
yes.
Okay.
So yes, on the legislation on paper, you can raise rent to technically anything you want. In reality, it's got to be within reason with what the current market rates are, which 99% of the people, that's fine. But I've seen cases I've read uh the results of hearings where they've thrown that kind of stuff out. So I mean, so where I wanted to paint this picture is you see rent controls in Ontario and BC, where I'm sure you've had these conversations lots on how they actually artificially push rents up. Because and part of the problem too with rent controls is also in both BC and in your guys' province in Ontario, when a tenant moves in, they don't have to move out until they want to move out. Where in Alberta, each party, if it's a fixed term, it is a fixed term, meaning that when that term is over, that lease is done, they have to move out. And I think that's a huge kind of component to it. But let me get back to the story. So we got well balanced legislation, and then I looked at the rents last year, and I saw this was super interesting. And this is my kind of my prediction or my read on what I'm seeing is rents went up across the country everywhere because of inflation. Right, we're dealing with an inflationary period that we're in. All these rents went up between two major cities. Of all the major cities in Canada, only one city was substantially lower than everybody else. Now, why would that be? And I'll give you one guess. It's in Alberta, and it's either Edmonton or Calgary. Which do you think had lower rents?
Edmonton. Actually, no.
Edmonton.
Calgary's had really low rents as well for a period of time. No.
Yeah, no, but so when our rents went up last year and so did Edmonton, I'd say Edmonton basically stayed at the rate of inflation. That's what they increased by. We almost doubled them from where our average rates rent rates were. And the reason why is a restriction on supply. Edmonton is has had again, they're a decade ahead. They had their blanketed wide legal secondary suiting. They had a more affordable housing. So really, the supply has always been very well balanced in that city, and it hasn't risen as sharply as it has here in Calgary, where we're having a challenge meeting supply needs. So what I wanted to highlight there, though, is because we have the best legislation in the country on a provincial standard that allows more people wanting to participate and participate in that transaction. We got more people coming in to supply the market
Mhm.
as demand was going up to meet it,
Mhm.
which is great. That's what you want to keep rents competitive. And then you've got the next restriction when you go down from the provincial level is access and zoning. Where can I build supply? How easy can I build supply? And hands down, Edmonton is well past Calgary for that with what they've done with their bylaws and zoning and secondary suites and all that. So they've had a huge amount of supply. They have not only that supply, a lot of that supply is very entry level, very, again, talking how we talked earlier about affordable housing, the basement suites, all those kind of things where they're just typically less desirable, that they command lower rents. And so, I mean, if all things being equal, Calgary and Edmonton should have had a very similar increase in their rents from an economical perspective. But because of those things we just talked about, they were able to meet their own demands, and their rent stayed a lot more stable and only increased to what inflation was going, what
Yeah.
everyone's experiencing with interest rates, mortgages, increase in insurance, and so on, and other
Right.
costs that drive rents.
That's great news for buyers and tenants. Not That's not what I want to hear as a investor owner, as an existing investor owner.
Yeah, it's still a good thing because your
And sorry,
cost to get.
in terms of Edmonton, like if from what you're telling me, I'd rather own. I'm an investor, right? As a business operator, my product I want to be in short supply. It's just like Apple, right? They're always
Yeah,
sold out of stuff.
I'd rather just have stable, ongoing, slow growing rents. What Don Campbell's always preached.
Yeah.
I'd be okay in Edmonton because then your cost to get into products is also a lot cheaper. Whereas we have older bylaw and zoning and building code that you have to adhere to at a lot higher cost point to get in. So it depends. I mean, depends your buying power and what your
Mhm,
numbers are and
mhm.
all that looks.
Right, right.
It's not
It,
it's
it
not bad.
depends. Yes,
Yeah.
different
So
price point, different budgets.
yeah. And you know what? But you look at the growth, their appreciation is model is very similar to Calgary and really any of the major cities in Alberta. And I like the two major cities in the sense that we're more of a balanced market when you compare the roller coasters of a single industry, small city or town in Alberta. So I'm
Mhm,
talking about oil driven Grand Prairie, Fort McMurray, things like that. Like when they make money and things are booming, they spike. It's a roller coaster up. But man, just as fast as you go up, you'll come down. You tie into a major city like a Calgary and Edmonton, we've got
mhm.
post-secondary, we've got agriculture, in multiple industries driving the local needs of the housing stock.
Yeah.
So if one industry takes a kick in
Mhm,
and is going down, you might have a bit of an decrease in supply or rent, but you're
mhm.
not riding the roller coaster of
Right,
a
right,
single driven industry
right, right.
town or city.